So yeah, hi everybody. Thank you for joining me again. My name is Mark Mandel. I am a developer advocate for Google Cloud Platform. I'm joining you today actually from the office. I've been streaming from home, so I've got a little slightly different setup, but it looks like hopefully everything should go relatively according to plan. I'm still coughing a little bit, which is unfortunate, but I will try my best to hold that back. Actually, why don't I take a cough drop while I'm sitting here? And that would be good. Awesome. All right. So what do we want to do today? Let's have a look. So for those of you who haven't necessarily hung out with me before, I normally work on a project called Agones. It is a project for running game servers at scale on top of another project called Kubernetes. My friend Mark Drew is on the chat and is telling me I have a sexy deep voice. Oh boy, that's from all the coughing I've been doing. Okay, cool. So, all right, let's get stuck into some stuff. Yeah, let's switch over. Nice. Okay, thank you, Mark. Mark and I have known each other for a very long time. Where do I want to stop? So the job we're doing today, we started this. I didn't record this one, but we started this a little while ago, wherein I want to have a fleet of game servers that are available. So I want to have like a group of, say, 10 of them, which I can then pull a warm server out of that I can do stuff with. Oh man, I really am coughing today. And I've already set this up inside Kubernetes as what's called a custom resource definition. If you just want to think of that as like a database of values, that's totally fine. And so that I can create this thing called a fleet inside Kubernetes. But what I need to do is write this thing called a controller. And the controller's job is literally just to look out for those changes in those data structures and then do stuff according to it. So we actually have this thing called fleet that I'm creating now. We have this other thing called a game server set, which I've also created. And its job is just to grow and shrink these numbers of game servers. And the job of the fleet will be to either keep a game server set or to rotate through if we actually want to have a new version. So what I'm doing in this controller code, we'll have a quick look through it, is the simplest version possible. I like to start simple when I code. So that when you create a fleet, it's going to create a backend game server set, which will then create, say, like 10 game servers and all the stuff that happens behind there. I've done some work on this previously, so we're just going to kind of pick up from where that left off. And we can continue down from there. So this thing called a controller, it exists inside package fleets. And so actually, I'll show you a couple of interesting things. So there's a bunch of controller code. The interesting part's probably here more than anything else. We have things called informers. Informers enable us to basically react to events within Kubernetes itself. So here I'm saying like if a fleet gets added or a fleet gets updated, what I want to do is enqueue it. And I'm going to enqueue it in this backend queue. Queuing and that kind of stuff is very important inside controllers. Basically, the mindset you want to have inside Kubernetes when building code like this for Kubernetes is it doesn't matter what happens inside the distributed system, I want to come back to some sort of healthy state. So what I'm going to do is basically say, okay, so if you add a fleet or you update a fleet, I'm going to do what's called a synchronization, which is let's look at the current state of where things currently are and then react accordingly to bring it back to what it is that we've had defined. And if we want to actually have a look at a fleet, actually let's do that. Let's look at what a fleet's meant to do. Let's pop open issues, game server fleets, just so that we have some bit more context as well. We'll look at the design doc. We'll make that a little bigger. Yeah, that's not too bad. And let me know if like the text is too small or anything like that. I'm more than happy to adjust. So here we have a fleet. This is the design ticket. This is all up on agones.dev, which will redirect you to the GitHub repo. We'll have a number of replicas. There's some update strategies for when things change. We're not going to do that today. And then we have a game server template, which is basically the details of the game server, like what port does it run on, what container is it running, that kind of stuff. Cool. All right, so that's the basic thing. Feel free to throw questions in there if there is anything I'm saying or I'm assuming knowledge about anything. Please just let me know. That is totally fine. All right, sweet. All right, so we started some work previously. We have the event handler. Eventually, we'll actually write a little bit of queuing code to hook all this stuff up. But we're not going to worry about that too much for now. And so the event handlers are there, and then we have this thing called sync fleet, which is basically, again, like we want to take what we have declared in that configuration of what our configuration should be versus what we have, and then make sure those things match up, because maybe things break, or maybe there's been a change. It shouldn't actually make any difference, right? You should always come back to a healthy state. So you'll notice I like to write a lot of to-dos when I write my code. That means that if I ever have to stop at any point, I know where to pick back up from. And so the steps I wanted to take was basically, okay, have a look for all game server sets that belong to this particular fleet, and we'll look at how we did that in a minute. Basically say, okay, if there isn't a game server set, like we didn't get any, then let's create one, so that we've got one based on that template we saw in that configuration earlier. And then also to say, if the game server set replica count doesn't match what we have inside our fleet, like change it on the game server set too. So that's pretty much it. So and then we've got like other stuff. So right now I'm just going to ignore any changes to the template. So if somebody changes the container or anything like that, which is all the deployment stuff, like rolling updates from one thing to another, not going to worry about that right now. I just want to have something very basic that we can get started with, and then we can continue on from there. So I've actually written this thing called list game server sets already, but we haven't written a test for it yet. So we can actually look at some of the tooling that's available for writing tests for controller code and like the code that integrates with Kubernetes. And it's actually really nice. So we can totally do that. So just to have a look, when we create a game server, we add a particular label so we can find it a lot easier. So we're going to do that. It grabs stuff with that label. And it also has this thing called control by. When you create these resources inside Kubernetes, you can actually say one's controlled by another. And what should we call it? I got distracted by the chat. And you can say one thing's another. Pars T07 asked about the project. If you have a look just down below, it's agones.dev. And so you can see what it is that I'm working on there. It's all in the section right below my stream. So you can check that out right there. At some point, I really should put some bots in here so that you can see what it is that I'm working on and respond to things like that. But you should see that all below. Cool. So what I want to do is create a test for this to make sure that the list game server set stuff works. And it's actually kind of cool. So all right, here we go. So where are we? I have created a fleet, which is nice. All right, so what I want to do is create a fleet with replicas 5, and then I want to see if there's a list of game servers sets available for it. So how do I do that? So I've actually done some work to make this testing stuff a little bit easier for myself. So we're going to take advantage of that. Now, actually, so this is all backed by a thing called Client Go, which is the client for Kubernetes. And it has a bunch of mock libraries already built into it. And so I've kind of wrapped up the ones that I need. So here we have a kube client, there's a mock. EXT is just stuff for custom resource definitions. Don't worry about it, it's fine. The Agones client gets generated, and there's a fake for that too, and some other fakes as well. So I can actually, what I normally do when I do this stuff, and so why don't I actually look at how I did this in another spot. So I'm going to go game server sets, controller test. If I actually scroll all the way down to the bottom, here we go. I'm going to grab this. So new fake controller. So this is usually how I set up all my tests. And in fact, bear with me. List. Yes. So I can cheat a little. And I can grab this test and just look at how I did it. Because it's basically the same. I've done a very similar thing for listing out other stuff inside another test. But okay. Let's grab a new fake controller. This will be something I'll do something quite regularly. So AG testing, so that'll be my mocks package. We're just going to call that AG testing because that's where I've called it everywhere else. That did not work. Why did that not work? That should be AG testing. There we go. That's better. Cool. New controller. New controller. That is wrong. Let's have a look at our controller definition. New controller, cube client. All right, so I haven't pushed in any of that stuff. So cube client, I don't need that stuff just yet. Probably at some point soon. Cube client, ext, Agones, and the Agones informer. Okay, cool. That responds back with a controller. Cool. All right, so that looks pretty good. So now I can say controller mock. New fake controller. Cool. How do I want to do this? Okay, so what I need is a couple of... How did I do this over here? I'm actually trying to remember how I did this last time. List game servers. Okay, so I need some game server sets. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So I have a fleet. There's a function already on fleets, and then to create our own game server sets. So let's look at that. But first, there's a question more about Go. Nice to see some live coding and testing. So that's what I'm doing right now. Sweet. Parset is also said how much experience you have with Go and Kubernetes. Probably been working with Kubernetes for about 3 years. Go for at least 4, something like that. I started working with Go before I joined Google, about a year before I joined Google. And I've been working with Kubernetes pretty much the entire time I've been here, actually. So cool. All right. So game server set 1 equals f dot game server set. So this is already set up. So and we can have a quick peek in game server set. Basically takes that template, creates a game server set from it. Make sure that it has the right label on it, that it's belonging to it. So their owner references. Cool. Just set dot object meta. Set 1 dot object meta dot name. So we want to set the name for it. Just set 1. That's actually really important because make sure it has a unique name. Mainly because the backing system for the Cube client, so the client Go, it's actually got a cache behind it. If we use the informers particularly. And so if they don't have unique names, it's the name that is used basically as the caching key. I say caching, not caching, depending on what country you're from. That may be weird to you. All right, sweet. So that gives me that. No, that should be fine. All right, cool. All right, so what I need to do is whatchamacallit. What I need to do is basically fake it so that the fake client Go thinks that there's these game server sets. And I can do that actually quite nicely. So if we go into Agones client dot, and then we can add a reactor. So this is something that comes with the testing library. A reactor is basically like saying, hey, when I want you to do a particular resource action, then return this result is really it. So let's have a look. Verb string will be list. It will be game server sets. It is always the plural for reasons. I don't know why. And let's just complete that action for me. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. Cool. And all right, I don't like the word testing. We'll rename that to K8's testing. That's what I usually call it. Cool. Okay, so what do I want to return? I want to return... I have to remember the exact format. Let me have a look at how I did it before. I have to return the list object. Okay, cool, cool, cool. I can do that. Return true. Now there is a game server set list that takes in items, which is, off the top of my head, an array of game server set. Array of game server set, which is gs set 1 and gs set 2. Okay, so what that means then is, why is that complaining at me? Not enough arguments to return. Oh, no. Here's the error. Cool. Nice. This add reaction method is equivalent to the Python mock option side effect. Yeah, this is quite cool. It actually is super, super easy to use. And it says that I've done something wrong. Oh, you know why? Because that needs to be a Go pointer. Or a reference, I should say. It doesn't like me here. Cannot use set 1 as type v1 alpha. Game server set. What have I done wrong? Oh, because they're pointers. What do I do? Okay, cool. So this is an interesting little thing that's happened here. I'll point out to you. So it's actually saying this is a reference. This is an error here, saying cannot use GSset1 type pointer game server set as type non-pointer. So just so you know, so Go does have pointers, and if we look at this may be a little small actually. If we look at the reference here, that's not too bad. It does return a pointer to a game server set. So Go is going to complain here because it's expecting a reference. Excuse me. He's expecting a non-reference or a non-pointer. This is a particular API we don't have control over. So we can dereference it. We can basically say, hey, just give me the value. That's fine. And now it doesn't complain anymore. Sweet. Okay, wonderful. So that is adding the rector, which is sweet. There's one more thing we need to do is, we were talking a little bit about informers. What we actually need to do is start them, basically behind the scenes. And that's just the thing we need to do because that's just how this stuff works. Starting them basically says to the informers, hey, check out what's going on within the cache and start stuff going. I actually do it here. I'm just gonna start informers. Do I need anything else here? I don't think I do. No, that should be fine. All right. Here are that to do. All right, so that should put that data inside the cache, which is sweet. That's what we want. The data inside the cache. And so it's now available. And then we can actually do all kinds of stuff to the Kubernetes, anything we want to mock out. It's actually it's a really nice testing library. I'm actually a really big fan of it. Okay, cool. So now if I say, what do we, list error equals c.list game server sets for the fleet, which we have, which is going to error because that is a pointer. All right, that's better. Cool, and that does, I assume that spits out an error. Yep, okay, so we get back a list. So let's assert that the error is nil because we don't want any errors. That would be bad. And then we can be kind of lazy and just say assert.land. So there should be 2 items inside the list. And that list will be of type array of pointers to game server sets. Okay, cool. So there should be, oops, sorry, I did that wrong. That should be, I think it's 2. Yes. No, I got it wrong. Length comes second. All right, cool. Let's flip that. There we go. Okay, so that should be right. And then these items should be equal. So T list 0 should be GS set 1. And then the second one should be GS set 2. And let's see what breaks. Hopefully something breaks and we have good stuff happen. All right, cool. One of my teammates, Cbro, he is here as well. Basically, it's everyone I know. All right, let's run this test and see what happens. Running, compiling. Oh, I think it's going to fail. I think there's going to be a compilation failure because I'm seeing a thing that's declared and not used. Okay, cool. There's a couple of things. Here we go. So this one here, there's webhook stuff that I'm not using right now, so I'm not going to worry about that. I don't care. We'll delete that. That's fine. And then there's another one. Where's this one? GS sets. Oh, it's not used because I actually haven't done anything with it. I just want to make sure it works. So let's get rid of that for now. Although it still doesn't like me. Why doesn't it? New variable. Oh, okay, cool. So we'll placate it for now and just ignore that it's doing anything. All right. If I hit my hotkey and tell that to compile and run again, let's see what happens. Hello, stream from the office. Yes, I am streaming from the office, Afraid Duchess. I am indeed. Okay, sweet. That all passed. That's great. But there's actually one more test that I'd really like to do just to make absolutely sure this is doing all the things I want, which is I'm going to add an extra game. Actually, there's 2 things I want to test just to be absolutely sure. I'm going to add another game server set that doesn't have the label that it should have, and then another one that shouldn't be controlled by this object. Because in theory, just for interest's sake, where are we? There's 2 things that could potentially happen here. So where are we? Not list. I want to look at, here we go, game server set. So you'll notice we set a label. If you haven't used Kubernetes before, basically anything inside Kubernetes, you can put these arbitrary key value pairs, labels and values on them. They're really useful. You can query on them. They're great. And so we put the name of the fleet as a label. This makes it actually easy to look at the object itself and work out where it came from and what it's doing. But also, it's really easy to query it. But in theory, something could have the same name. It shouldn't happen very often, but we can also look at object references. So let's test both of those. So we'll do GS. So in theory, the values shouldn't change. So 3 equals f dot game server set. And then we'll say GS set 3 dot object meta dot name equals GS set 3. But we'll get rid of the labels. So object meta dot labels equals nil. Pointer GS set 3. All right, let's run that and see if anything goes wrong. How are we doing? Cool, we got heaps of time. Okay, that all worked. Great. That shouldn't show up, so that didn't. The other thing I want to do is make sure we're just going to remove GS4. Whoops, I keep doing that. Just magically. Game server set. I'm going to do one that object meta dot name GS set 4 GS set 4 dot object meta dot what is it? It is object owner references. Owner references equals nil. Let's clear that out. And then GS set 4. All right, so that should be added to. So that should also be ignored. So everything should be exactly the same. Let's run that. How are we doing? Compiling, and ooh, something broke. Something broke. What broke? Okay. Something not equal. Here we go. Let's have a look here. Interesting. Okay, so what is different between these two? Okay, so it's saying that these two values are not equal because they came in the wrong order. Oh. How did I do this in the other one? That's actually a really good question. Oh. So here's an interesting thing. Apparently, and apparently I fixed this last time, but apparently the order in which items may necessarily come out of that list function is not necessarily deterministic. So there's stuff in cache, and it may come out in a very different order than what you might expect it. So I literally did this exactly here. In fact, I'm just going to steal it. Where in another test where I just sorted it before I did my own testing. And then I can just do I can do this. So let's actually just steal this from here. I think this is fine. I have a feeling Cbro is probably like not happy with me right now because I know he hates deep equals on stuff like this, but it's so handy. Excuse me. So we're going to get rid of that. In fact, actually, I don't need the len because this will just do the whole thing. Game server set. And GS set 1 and GS set 2. So that should compare. So that's going to sort it by the object meta name, so it'll always come in the same order. If you haven't used this, this is the, I want to say Go 1.8, maybe 1.9. Probably someone in chat can tell me whether or not I got that right. The nice shorthand, there we go, for how to sort lists or slices or arrays, which we want to call it, of Go types. You used to have to write a bit more code. Now you don't have to write as much, which is super nice. Okay, let's run that. Let's run that. Make sure that works. Running. Yay! Test pass. Awesome. I'll run it again just for fun. Just make sure everything looks good. Fantastic. All right, so let's actually commit that. Add -a. Oh, actually, let's do one other thing. I actually have a shell that has all my tooling in it, so let's start that up. Everything about Agones, if you actually looked at the project at all, I tried to set it up so basically if you have make and you have Docker, you are good to go. So there's a shell we can use. I'm just going to, where are we, GST? Let's just go imports -w package. Make sure that's all tidied up nicely. Usually it does a pretty good job. All right, cool. Now let's commit that. Ooh, it looks like I hadn't done that in a while. Fun. All right, cool. That's okay. That's what malleable Git histories are for. Git add -a, git commit. All right, so I'm just going to commit that working test for listing of game server sets for a fleet. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so, all right, so we have the first step. First step is good. We can get rid of this to-do. We got all of those. So if we don't have a game server set, then let's create one. And we can test that as well. But it should be pretty straightforward. So let's have a look list. Let's bring that back. So if len of list equals 0, let's do some work. Let me think about this for a second. I'm just thinking this through. Because when we get down to here, you know what? Let's worry about it later. Let's worry about it later, and we'll get to it. This is going to complain because now it needs to create a new variable. All right, cool. GS set equals f.gs. Where's my fleet? Oh, I called it fleet as a word. I've been using f everywhere else. Yeah, that's fine. We'll call it fleet. Game server set. Now, here's an interesting thought. Okay, so the fleet creates a game server set, but what does it give it as a name inside Kubernetes? So let's actually just go inside the code and have a look. So we grab object meta. We actually deep copy it. Okay, that's fine. Oh, nice. So here it's already doing it. So what it's actually going to do is object meta has a thing called generate name. So Kubernetes can generate a name for you that's unique, which is great. That makes me super happy. So it's doing this work for me. This is actually really cool. So I don't have to actually do a lot. So it's telling it that generate a name based on the name of the fleet with a dash on the end of it. And then it clears out some stuff that is part of management of resources inside Kubernetes. We don't care about that too much. So that name is already handled. So that's sweet. I actually don't think I need to do anything major to this other than create it. So let's just do that. C.Agones client. Actually, C.fleet getter. Okay, so here's a cool thing. I've actually talked about this before, but I really want to hit this home now. So there, you may have noticed when we go up the top, there are two things here called a fleet getter and a fleet lister. And sometimes they look fairly similar. If we look at a fleet getter, for example, there's create, update, delete, get, list, watch, right? There's all that kind of stuff for like managing these fleets. And then a fleet lister also has like, say fleets, listing, list, get, so all the retrieval stuff. Difference being that the list ends up using, the lister ends up using the cache, whereas a getter will hit the API directly. Afraid Duchess. Hi, I haven't seen that. So like colon equals before. What does that do? So that's a really good question. Excuse me. So colon equals basically just says it's probably fairly similar to say. All right, so like here for example, colon equals. It's fairly similar to just an assignment operator, saying that basically take the variable event broadcaster and assign it the value of record.broadcaster. Or anything really from that point. But when you put a colon in front of it, that means that the value on the left is a new value, right? It's something you haven't had before. If you're just doing it as an equal operators, then that's an assignment, basically saying, I've already had this value, but I want to replace it with something else. This will also do stuff, if you ever look at other languages that use this kind of thing, you'll often see it referred to as type inference as well. So usually what this is actually saying behind the scenes is saying, create, for example, a event broadcaster variable that has the type and the value of new broadcaster. So it'll do that behind the scenes. And that's why the assignment is actually kind of important, because you're not doing that type inference behind the scenes. You don't want to necessarily do that. I hope that explains things for you, Afraid Duchess. But a good question. Okay, so what do I want? Let's do this. Fleet getter dot. So in this particular instance, what I want to do is create this game server set, but I need to do it directly against the API, right? There's no point in using the cache because I'm creating stuff. Fleets. I need to put in a namespace, so we'll just use the fleet.namespace. We're just going to use this object meta. Sorry. You can go straight to namespace because object meta is actually embedded inside Fleet and pretty much all the other objects that use object meta. I like being more explicit about it. Assignment count mismatch. Oh, that's because I haven't done it yet. And then we're going to create a... Oh, you know what? I'm calling the wrong thing. What I actually want is a game server set getter because I'm creating a game server set. There we go. Is that right? Game server set getter. There we go. There we go. Now fleet.objectmeta.namespace because we want this to be in the same namespace as the fleet. And now we can create a GS set. Nice. All right. If there's an error, and I've got some. If there's an error, beautiful. I'm actually going to return it. So I've already got some queuing stuff here set up, and we'll look at that later. But if something goes wrong in my syncing of fleets, then I'm just going to return the error, and then it'll essentially, because of the queuing actually that we'll end up implementing later on, it'll end up retrying. Again, so basically if master goes down, right, we're always dealing with a system that consistently self-heals. This is like super important. All right, cool. Where are we? Okay, cool. So there's a library called errors. Where are we? Return errors.wrap. Error. What about used in the past? Just so I'm consistent. I'll have a look. Oh, that's the test. Just have a look. I want to see if I'm getting consistent here. Here we go. Error creating for. Okay, cool. I like consistency. Cool. Error creating game server set for fleet. All right. And the nice thing, if you haven't used that package for Go errors, this is the package errors. Where are we? GitHub.com/package/errors. Super nice. It does stack tracing for you and also allows you to wrap errors inside other errors. So you can do you can basically pass things up the chain, which is super nice as well. All right, cool. So if there isn't a game server set, create one. We'll come back to testing this. I think we'll end up being we'll need a test for that. That's okay. I might actually write it if there isn't a game server set yet, then create one. Now, in theory, we could have multiple game server sets currently running for let me think about this, for a given fleet. Now, one thing that I haven't worked out yet is determining which one is like the active one. So in theory, if you change the template or the image, one game server set would get scaled down and one would get scaled up. Right now, we are ignoring that for right now. So right now, for this particular PR, we're going to say, so therefore, we are going to assume for the moment that there is only ever one game server set for a fleet. We will handle multiple game server sets in the next PR. All right, start simple, build out from there. That's what I like to see. All right, so we'll do that. Because rolling updates is going to be really weird and fun. I need to think about this a little bit more. So, which means pointer to a game server set. We need to have a game server set as a value. And we'll call it, you know what, we'll actually call it active, just as a prep for what we're doing down the line. And then, and I want that there so that we can create it if we need to, but we don't want to assign a new value. Right, and this is actually interesting. So Afraid Duchess, you were asking about that before, right? So this is actually really important. So here I'm calling var active set. So I'm setting up the variable so that I can keep it. and do stuff with it if I need to. So here, I don't want to do a new value. This is bad. And in fact, if we do some linting at some point, it'll actually complain because it'll say that they're mirroring each other, or shadowing each other is usually what it says. These two values here, so this one and this one. And that can be really confusing. So we actually specifically don't want to do a whole new value, or we don't want to do type inference or anything like that. We actually just want to say equals, because that's the value we want. Otherwise, we're going to cheat and say active GS set equals list 0. So we'll just grab the first value. So that's fine. Yeah, we're not gonna care about this right now. I'm just actually gonna move that there. I feel like that's contextually a little better spot. All right, and we can actually cheat a little. Can we cheat a little? No, actually, no, it's fine. So we have an active getter set. So then we can just say if fleet dot temp fleet dot spec dot replicas does not equal active gs set dot spec dot replicas. So if they're not the same. Then let's update them. Should be pretty straightforward, right? So, so then we can just say, because we cache everything. Here's a good point, because this is actually important when doing this inside Kubernetes. We need to make a copy first. So gs set copy equals active gs set dot deep copy. That's a function that's available to us. And so that creates as a copy. So we can change that, which is lovely. So gs set copy dot spec dot replicas equals, what do we call it? Fleet dot spec dot replicas. Sweet. And now let's update it. So we will do a, where are we? C, which is our controller, and we want to update a game server set getter dot game server sets fleet dot object meta dot namespace, and we want to update. We don't care about the value, but we care about the error. GS set copy. Cool. And then the same thing as before. Return errors dot wrap error updating replicas for game server set for fleet %us fleet dot object meta dot name. That's not too bad. Oh, returns. Oh, it's ref. There's ref and there's ref. Okay, sweet. We don't want that. All right, cool. Okay, so this is not a bad little syncing function. It's kind of neat. So why don't we test it? So there's a few different things we'll want to test in here, which will be fun. All right, so why don't we do that? Let's think this through. Okay, so I'm going to commit this. I like to do a lot of commits. Let's do a go imports first. Make sure everything's all tidy. All right, GST. So I'm just using my ZSH and the Git plugins. So I have like some stuff that's just Git status. GA is Git add, and then GC is Git commit. First pass at sync fleets. If anyone's interested at a later date, I'm more than happy to go through a bunch of Git stuff as well in terms of like rebasing and pulling and merging and all that kind of fun stuff too. Isn't it better to separate that into smaller parts? I don't know if there's anything I can do here that's smaller. Listing is that. This maybe like creating this. This I might pull out eventually. I might pull out eventually. I mean, a lot of this is just really small bits of logic. I think this section here will end up getting pulled apart at some point down the line as we start doing deployments, but it's a good question about whether we should separate this into separate functions. I'm not there yet, right? I tend to refactor a lot as I go through, but this doesn't feel like it's complicated enough yet to really pull it apart. And I want to write some tests for this anyway because I like to have some end-to-end tests and having some nice coverage of that. So it is a good question though. Thanks for asking it. Pars T is probably the right name. But it's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. It's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, a lot of this is just like if there's nothing there, create it. Like meh, or do other things. I think it'll probably get more complicated as we go along. It is. Yeah, I think it's simple enough. So anyway, let's do this now. I'm just trying to think about how I want to test this and how I want to set up this test, but that's okay. So we have a few different tests. So, I'm in the wrong test. That doesn't help. Fleets controller test. Let's go in here. All right. Func. Actually, we can do this, which is also nice. Test controller sync fleets. Testing T. Cool. Let me think this through. So we're gonna need a fleet. Let's start with that. And this will be fun. This will be interesting. All right. So here. So you know what? I'm gonna do something that I often do, which is pull this out, and I'm gonna extract that into a method. We're gonna call that default fixture. So there's my default. Where did that go? Let's put that in the bottom. I like that at the bottom so that I can create myself a fleet every time I want to. That'll make my life easier. Oh, come on. Don't do that to me. It got rid of this. It got rid of the it got rid of the import for me. That was very handy. Thank you so much, except for the fact that I didn't want you to do that. But the good thing is, whoop, that's not what I want. Sometimes it doesn't like me. Where are we? V1. Here we go. I want to add an import value and call that meta v1, which is what I call everywhere else. Unfortunately, or fortunately, inside Kubernetes, the package names, a lot of them end in the version number of what they are. So you'll notice like the Agones dev stuff here ends in v1 alpha 1. A lot of the K8s API machinery ends in v1. So you end up renaming some of the stuff into stuff that makes a bit more sense. Meta v1 seems to be pretty common. There's some other ones, core v1 for some other libraries and stuff. But find something that works for you. All right, sweet. So FLB default fixture. All right, so we have that. So actually, let's think about this for a sec. So there's a couple of tests that I want to write. So I'm actually going to break that up. There's what are we? So there'll be three. There's when there we'll call it so no game server set. Create it. And then we'll see, maybe we can join these somehow, but that's all right. If you haven't seen this before, there is game server set with the same number of replicas, so there should be no change in this one. Cool, and then t.run game server set with different number of replicas. Cool. So those are the three tests that I want to write. If you haven't seen that before, t.run is just a nice way of doing sort of subtests or other tests underneath. It's a nice way of breaking it up. And you'll also notice inside IntelliJ, which is really sweet, I can run the top level test, which runs all of them, or I can run subtests from it as well, which is quite nice. So, just thinking this through really quickly and how I want to do this. Yeah, all right, we'll start with the easiest for now. F equals, so we need a default fixture, and then we'll maybe see if we can tighten this up a little and to make things a bit easier. We want our controller and our mocks, which is new fake controller. So that does that. All right, so the first thing I need to do is, what I need to do is make sure that that fixture is inside the cache. That's the first thing I need to do. So mocks.client.add reactor. There's a couple of ways I could do this. What's the easiest way? So there is two ways I could do this. One of which is doing like we saw before, excuse me, with the list command, and that'll grab everything. But I can also do a fake watch. So Kubernetes has ability to watch for events, which is how the cache actually works behind the scene. And we can use that, but I don't think I'm going to do it that way, so that's fine. This is actually just a little bit easier. We'll call it fleets. And I'll show you why this needs to go in the cache in a minute. Action. Boom, boom, boom. All right, cool. So return true. True is, if I remember correctly, I think continue processing off the top of my head. Or don't continue, or success. I think it's one of those. Fleet list. We'll just take in the F. Let's type meta items. Array of fleets. That takes type F. No. All right, so that'll populate that, and that needs to be. Did I do that right? I'm guessing here. Yep, I'm right. Okay, cool. And that needs to be dereferenced because that's an actual value rather than the pointer. All right, so that will put it in there. What I want to see is that when I do my sync, that I want to make sure that the thing got created. So let's actually just make a check. We'll call it created equals created equals false. And then we can use the reactor pattern exactly the same as we have previously. So let's look at that. So basically I can intercept other events. In this case, verb create. We want to do game server set. Game server set. Excuse me. And then func action. I don't like those values, so we'll get rid of those. All right, cool. So created equals true. So again, we want to put that. So we'll also have some of the bits and pieces. So let's, we're going to add some extra stuff to this. So to get the value out of this, we can do some casting. It's actually not too bad. So we'll have a created action will be action dot, and let's cast that to a create action. That's what gets fired behind the scenes. And then the object, so then we will want the GS set, because we'll want to check some values on it to make sure it's actually the thing that we want to be created and it's been created the way we would like for it to be created. Ca dot get object dot pointer to game server set. And I'm happy to have this panic if it fails. That's just part of the test. If it panics, then that's bad. And that's fine. Created equals true. This also means that I can do this now. I can go created true, GS set, which is what gets created, and nil, which means everything gets passed through the way it's meant to. But what's neat is I can also assert in here. So let's check the label. That's probably actually a good one to do. So we can do, actually let's check ownership, because ownership is actually super straightforward. Where are we? More than anything else, and then that'll tell us whether it's the right thing. This is a bit layers on layers, but it'll be nice. Assert dot true true t controller of, I want to say no. Oh man, what's the function? Is control. Yes, there we go. So GS set and then the fleet. I'm trying to remember whether or not. Let's see if this works. I have a feeling it may fail because, in fact, actually, I'll do this here. I will do this. I've changed my mind. UID is a. Ooh, what type is a UID? I think it's a string. Okay, cool. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. I feel like without the UID, that will always return true. So let's add that there. It shouldn't break anything either. Cool. So yeah, because if we look at the backing code behind here, yeah, it checks to see if the UIDs match up. So we'll want some kind of unique ID. 1, 2, 3, 4 will do for now. Awesome. All right, cool. So assert true, that works there. All right, so let's do what we normally do, which is start our informers. We can actually, I'm not going to do that. We can grab this from previously. Actually, Control-Shift-V. There we go. That one. Perfect. Yeah, IntelliJ has an inbuilt paste buffer, which is super nice. Anyway, all right, so that starts our informers, so that's getting going. So that's got some data inside it. So now I can say sync fleet. Now this is the interesting bit, right? you'll notice that the sync actually takes a key, not necessarily the object. This is because we're putting stuff in a cache. It may take time. So what's the first thing we do is we actually grab that key directly out of, we grab the key and then we go looking for it inside the cache. So we have the most up-to-date version of what it is that we're working on. Actually, we're going to want a namespace on this then too. Namespace, we'll make it defaults because the key is actually the namespace / the name. If you actually want to see that get created, Kubernetes comes with a bunch of handy cache functions. So you'll notice here in Q, we're just doing standard stuff. There we go. See, meta cache, meta namespace key. We can actually just cheat and use that. And that'll do exactly what it is we need it to do. So let's grab that, come back over here, and we'll call it F. That should work. No, it doesn't like that. All right, let's not do that. Let's hard code it. Default / what is it? Fleet one. Cool. Sync fleet. Now, is that going to spit out an error? It may. All right, so let's capture that. Assert.nil. So we don't want that to error. We want to make sure that true t created game server set should have been created. All right, so that looks like that should be it. So let's have a look. We create a fixture. We set up our controller. We add some reactors to catch an intercept event. So the list will populate the cache. So we'll put the fleet in so that when the queue starts, that will be there and ready to go, which is nice. And then, where are we? So then the create event should get created because it's not there already. It'll be like, nope, don't know it. And then it will create that and we should see that come through. All right, so let's run that and see if the magic actually happens. Let's see how we go. How are we doing for time? Oh no, we're running out of time. All right. Oop, nope, something failed. Oh, you know what? It's always plural. That gets me all the time, unfortunately. Let's run that again. The resource name is always plurals. I don't know why. It just is. It's not the best documented in the world, I will say that. But it's nice to see. Awesome. Test pass. Yay! All right, that's working according to plan. Just trying to decide if there's a way we can make this easier, but let's not worry about that for now. Git add -a, git commit, one test for the sync fleet. Cool. Let's just copy paste for now. I think there's probably some cleanup we could do to make like this section repeatable. Maybe. We'll see how we go. Excuse me. We don't want created. So in this case, and we can steal. Yeah, we could maybe. Let's. I like to write it out, and then maybe we can turn it into something a little bit more sophisticated. It's got not quite as much, repetition, but we'll get better to have something that works, than to not. Essentially. All right. So in this case. We're going to do, it's got the same number of replicas. We're going to do exactly the same thing. But what we want to see here is that it doesn't get updated. If the values are the same, we had that check in place. So let's make sure that that doesn't happen. So here we go. So, all right. So we need to create, we need to list a game server set. Okay. So let's do that. Yeah, we can probably do that in here. I think that'll be fine. So list game server sets. We don't want to return that. We want to return something very different. So let's actually say gs set equals. Excuse me. You know what? Actually, let's change that. Let's make our gs set up here. That'll make me happier. Gs set equals f dot game servers. I can't spell. Game server set. gsset.objectMeta.name. Now, actually, this is an interesting question. Let's have a look. I just want to double check the code here. Name equals gs set one. Game server set. So it should. Where are we? Spec, game server set. Okay, so the replicas should already line up. So we shouldn't have to change anything here. Cool. Actually, let's come back here. All right, so here. So in case we want here, we want to return true. We want a game server set list. What time are we doing? Sweet, got 4 minutes. I reckon we can get this in just in time. Items, array of game server sets. Whoops, game server set. There we go. GS set. Pass that in. No. All right, sweet. Okay, so that does that starting informers. And then, okay, yes, we want to, if an update happens, that's bad. We actually don't want it to happen. So, excuse me, we'll add another reactor for update. Game server sets. Oops. Cool. Action. Nope. 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 All right. And what we want to have here is updated equals true. We actually don't care about the results if this happens, so we're just going to return, because it shouldn't happen. Return true, nil, nil. I can't type today. There we go. Return true, nil, nil. Perfect. And then, so that should be right. So, yep, sync fleet should come through, and then updated should be false. Let's see how we go. Nope, I messed something up. What I messed up? Cannot use GSset type pointer as... Oh, need to dereference it. Let's do that. Let's run that now. Okay. There we go. Sweet, that all works. All right, so what do we got? We got 2 minutes. You reckon we can get this done in we can get this done in 2 minutes, because it looks like it should just be basically the same. Excuse me. All right, so let's just literally copy paste for now with some small changes. So that's all the same, except for the fact that now GSset dot spec dot replicas, we'll say it's something ridiculous like 99. Well, it's not actually ridiculous, but for this it's updated. It's way more. Or actually, you know what? I have a better idea. Let's do this as f.replicas, f.spec.replicas plus 10. Because that means then, if the replicas ever change in a different place, I always know it's going to be different. I'm not going to set a magic number, that's going to be much nicer. Okay, so I know that's always going to be different. But the things we'll need to change. Ooh, my messages are bad. This is bad. Should not have been updated. And this should have been updated. So now this should be true. I should be assessing this is true. But what I'll want to do is also check to see if the spec value has changed. So let's do that. Okay, so I need an update action. So the action, it'll be an update action. So we'll cast that. That's a Kubernetes stuff. And then we'll call it GSset. This might complain. Equals ua.getObject.pointer to a game server set. Cool. And now I can do my asserts. Assert dot equal t. I should expect it to have the same as the replicas. Yeah, spec dot replicas should be the same as gsset dot spec dot replicas. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's see what happens. Run. Compiling. Lovely, that passed. All right, this is actually pretty sweet. So that actually gives me, and we'll just run it at the top level, make sure everything's still working. This actually gives me a nice sync function that I can use to basically bring everything back to a happy state, which is really nice. This is very much how building code for distributed systems especially, but also just manipulating stuff inside Kubernetes works really well. So making sure that if any point in time something breaks, we bring it back to a healthy state. And that's really important. So that's actually worked quite nicely. So I'm going to commit this. Excuse me, GSD, git add -a. I'll probably clean this up a bit. Tests for first pass at sync, where are we at? Sync fleets. I'm just going to push that up as well while that's running in the background. Cool. Yeah, so that's been an hour, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to keep hacking on Agones. I'll see if I can get in another stream this week or another couple of streams this week working on some of this stuff. There's a bunch of pull requests that have gone in recently, and I'm still working on fleets. So it's getting there slowly. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure to follow me on Twitch. You can also follow me on Twitter. So I'm going to put announcements out if I'm doing ad hoc stuff on either of those channels. I'm going to take the recording, chuck it up on YouTube, so you can see the YouTube link below as well. And finally, yeah, if you have any questions, reach out on Twitter, reach out on Twitch. It was really fun hanging out with you all and writing some code and doing some fun stuff. So until we meet again, either Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, or at another time, possibly this week, or maybe even over the weekend. Maybe not the weekend. Then I will chat to you all later. Thanks so much.